Yeah. Nick would probably be here by now.
Sisters out on the stick.
That says you're just gonna have to suck it up.
Hey, we all ready?
Yes. Rocks.
It's kind of fun. The Home Rule School District Charter Commission meeting today, October 6, 2014, is now in session. It is 6:10, and our apologies for starting 10 minutes late. People who are going to present will not have any time shaved off their presentations because we started late. Just want to reassure everyone. And we are at 3003 Ross Avenue in the Central Administration Building in the boardroom. I will now establish a quorum, and I'm going to go from my left. So, Commissioner Sindel, for the record, state your name and say present, please.
DeMarcus Ranger present.
Benita Reese present.
Ricardo Mendez present.
Ron Oliver present.
Bob Weiss, present.
Jerome Garza, present.
Jeff Veazey present.
Kevin Melanson, present.
Having a quorum established, we will now proceed to our Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join and stand and join us, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. That brings us to item 3. The minutes have been circulated. Is there a motion to approve them subject to any future correction?
So moved.
Second.
Second has been moved by Commissioner Garza, seconded by Commissioner Ranger to approve the minutes as distributed, subject to future correction. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now we get to the fun part of the meeting, and I want to welcome all the guests, so I need everyone to help me to make sure I have every distinguished person properly represented. I'm going to start with a new guest, former city council person, mayor pro tem, ruler, friend, her eminence, and grace, Diane Ragsdale, thank you. And by the way, someone I consider a 30-year personal friend, for the record. So I appreciate your letting me have a little fun there. I see Dr. Earhart, raise your hand, and Bernard, raise your hand. Trustees and trustees, former trustees, principal. Who am I missing here?
Trustee.
Oh,
Former trustee.
Former trustee, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm staring right at you from District 3, all right? Did I at least hope got the district correct? And my apologies, Trustee Foreman. Anyone else I missed on this? Thank you all for being here. And let me just review for the record what I shared with each of our groups. The commission has, as you know, been out in the community, and as part of our listening and self-education, we have been asking ourselves, how can we engage in conversation with people who have evidenced a deep interest in this whole home rule charter process? And so many groups have submitted requests to speak, and we have tried to organize this. And tonight, you 3 are the first through. So, we hope we don't stumble too badly. The general ground rules that I've told everyone is to basically 15 minutes presentation, as many people as you would like. We would ask everyone to bring something in writing because we want to create a public record for our own work and going forward. And then the commission and commissioners have told the chair that they would like to be interactive as much in the process going forward. So based on my experience at the City Plan Commission, we'll have a round of questions with follow-up. I'll try to be gentle on the 45 minutes, knowing there's 3 groups. We didn't know how many we could do. And if you've seen the posted agenda, we have a little housekeeping that we have to do at the end of the meeting. And so we want to leave a little time, but we want to make sure that we have our conversation with you tonight. And we very much appreciate your being here and willing to do this with us. I'm looking at Mr. Harris. This is being streamed in all the regular TV. So when you speak, it's going to be very important that you use a mic. Know that you will be being beamed and part of our permanent record. So I'm very excited about it and welcome you all. And so on the agenda that we posted, this was just the chair assigning first, second, and third. So, that was me. So I will ask, and the first group, and the way we want to do it, we made room up front. So we want you to be close to us when you're presenting. And then if you have other people in the audience who would like to answer a question that one of us might have, just raise your hand and I will be sure to acknowledge it. So I don't know who will like to come up. Dallas Friends of Public Education / Stop the Takeover. Dr. Earhart, do you want to introduce your group? And
Thank you. Now, there's several mics here. Which one am I supposed to
whichever one you like.
Oh, nice. All right, I'll pick the middle.
These chairs are awkward. So you can either sit or stand.
Is this an okay place? Is this going to be okay right here? Great.
Just make, well, Cheryl, just make sure the mics.
All right.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to share ideas with you. And thank you. Your dedication has been more than commendable in this effort. Let me introduce Stop the Takeover. We're a group founded in early spring to do just that. Stop the takeover of our schools, converting our schools into a charter district. Our group of 19 includes former and current DISD teachers and administrators, a pediatrician, 3 with earned doctorates, 3 attorneys, 1 mom with a kid currently in school, and 2 involved in the DISD desegregation and single-member district litigation. Several are business persons, 2 former U.S. congressional staffers, a former city council member, a current county school board member, 2 former DISD school trustees, a nationally acclaimed statistician, 1 former state representative, PTA officers, Republicans and Democrats, and between us we have over 20 DISD graduates as our children and grandchildren. We represent 3 ethnic groups. We have met weekly for the last 7 months. I tell you this not only because I am very proud to be a part of this impressive group, but more importantly, to let you know that we didn't just fall off the turnip truck. The information I'm presenting from them stems from educated research. None of us have been paid anything for what we've done. None of us stand to profit personally from this issue. We have given this considerable gift of time and experience because we believe the Dallas Independent School District is just about the most important thing in the life of our children and our community. We're a subgroup of Dallas Friends of Public Education, which is a political action committee that we'll present to you at a later date. Unlike DFPE and our community, our schools, we have a single purpose: to protect our schools from what we believe to be a very detrimental, hostile takeover. Those groups, and all our members are a part of those groups, either one or both of them, and those will continue to support our schools after this issue is settled, to continue to advocate for the best possible education for our children. You may believe, and some have told you, that you've been given a mandate by the Dallas voters to write a charter to turn the Dallas Independent School District into the first home rule charter school district in Texas. Let me tell you what a mandate is, by definition. It's a command or authorization to act in a particular way on a public issue given by the majority of the electorate to its representatives. Clear that the vast majority of the people who signed the petitions did not understand that it was to draft a charter to do away with the Dallas Public Independent School District. There are those, however, who have not been as involved as you, who will think that your task is to propose a charter and that not to do so would in some way be a failure on your part. We want to help you answer that. Our purpose tonight is to help you justify your position of listening to the public, reviewing the research, and if you conclude, as we have, such a proposal would not only be unnecessary but would be very detrimental to our children and our community and a bad precedent for the rest of the state by not writing such a proposal. We applaud your gathering information and suggest you produce a report of findings to the community. You have heard many good suggestions from the public at your community meetings, and the speakers have been overwhelmingly against changing our schools into charter schools. While Stop the Takeover agrees that there are many things that should and can be done to make ours an even better school district, we're not here to present those ideas because they might be interpreted as our suggestions for inclusion in a charter proposal. We strongly believe there is no such thing as a good charter. First, charters are unnecessary. No educational ideas proposed by SOPs are disallowed by current law, not one. Second, such a charter process would be very expensive. The requirements required preceding the ballot offering the election or elections, all taking money from our children. Third, such a charter destroying our school district, were it to pass, we would lose the protection of all laws not specifically written into the charter. Unintended consequences would be huge. Fourth, without a home rule charter clouding the landscape, we would have a very difficult time getting a bond program or any tax increase passed. Fifth, there will be time and money consuming litigation on such an untried idea. Sixth, to change our single-member district governance in any manner, the election of additional board members, the appointment of additional trustees, or any other dilution would be very bad for our community. A great deal of work went into finding equity in our election. The public schools in Dallas were first under the firm rule of the city of Dallas. A long struggle separated that poor arrangement from where we have come today. It would be a huge step backward to change that district governance. Last, we believe you are setting a precedent for the state, and we encourage you to consider the 1,033 public school districts in Texas by following the clear program you have outlined, adhering closely to the law, leading to a logical conclusion, and we believe it would be that destroying public neighborhood schools anywhere in this state and substituting them for charter schools would be a bad precedent. Now, in front of you, you should have a notebook, and that notebook our group prepared, and it has all that egotistical stuff I told you about us in it. Let's look together at that notebook. We also got the assistance of the Texas Education Agency attorney. On page 1, we discuss why a home rule charter school district is not like a home rule city. Home rule cities and home rule districts are established under different authority and follow different laws. Home rule cities can create public policy and law that is permitted by the Texas Constitution. Our home rule charter district would only create policy granted by Chapter 12 of the Education Code, period. On page 11, question 7 addresses the possibility of future changes to the charter. In addition to the current amendment process that is outlined in current law, consider the changes to Chapter 12. They may be changed by the legislature. Changes that will not go before the voters for approval. Should the legislature make those changes in a bait and switch, there will be no approval by the people in our community. Laws were proposed last session that would alter Chapter 12 to take away the voter turnout requirements, eliminate the educator certification requirement, educator rights, elementary class size. We do not believe that you can write a charter to preserve your original intent. On page 12, question 9, it's unclear how the charter would be enforced. The Texas Administrative Code has given the State Board of Education the authority to revoke or place on probation a home rule charter district if there's a material violation of the charter. However, nowhere in the law is material violation of the charter defined. This ambiguity in the law makes it impossible for the State Board of Education to make sure that the provisions of a charter would be followed. According to a recent conversation with Von Bayer, the new TEA General Counsel, it is unclear whether the Texas Education Agency would even be responsible for enforcing such an educational code. Another question is this. DISD currently has many policies in place which they do not follow. There are examples of DISD not even following state law. Is there anything in a home rule district charter law which would prevent this from happening on a new home rule district? On page 13, question 10 outlines the process for charter revocation. This is a very expensive process. It is unlikely that the district, once converted to a system of charter schools, would ever regain its statute as an independent school district. Ever. Never. Question 20 on page 20 addresses the issue surrounding the governance, which has been the most hotly debated area of home rule. Is it possible for a district to adopt a different governance structure other than the 9 single-member district? Our research suggests that this is not possible under current law. Moving on to question 21 on term lengths. You'll find an explanation as why the home rule district charter schools are subject to the same rules as the independent school districts in regard to changing the length of terms of trustees. Current law does not permit either to do so. Page 27, question 27, deals with whether a mayoral control provides any benefits to a school district. Do the children do better? We've provided a link to the resources to a study that shows no conclusive evidence that governance changes increase student achievement. In fact, in many cities, parents and community groups feel that they are out of the policy-making loop. And while we're on the subject of student achievement, is there any evidence that becoming a home rule district charter would increase student performance? The chart on page 40 compares the end-of-course exam results of students on free and reduced lunch in DISD with those in Dallas County open enrollment charters. Now, the performance on DISD students is not acceptable, but the open enrollment charter performance is worse. Consider the graph on page 42, which reveals a strong correlation between poverty and SAT scores. In Dallas, almost 90% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. Certainly, the college success rate among low-income students in the U.S. and in Dallas must improve. However, much of the data home rule advocates use is misleading and falsely blames the students and the teachers of Dallas while ignoring the effects of poverty. While poverty should never be used as an excuse for poor performance, it is worse to use poor performance as a rationale to imply the source of the issues are 100% school and teacher based. The section on financial implications begins on 46. It's unclear whether a home rule charter district would qualify as a school district in order to have their bonds guaranteed by the Texas Permanent School Fund. This would be a disaster. The section on student and parents, starting on page 63, outlines some of the dangers a home rule charter school district could present to students and parents' rights. In short, we don't need it, and it would be detrimental to destroy the Dallas Independent School District, lose all the protections our educational code provides, and change all of our schools to charter schools. The first appendix in your notebook lists all of us in Stop the Takeover, and I'm going to ask all of the Stop the Takeover group to please stand. Every one of these has given you their email address and would welcome your questions, any individuals you would like to speak to. Y'all can sit down. Aren't they impressive? Yes! The two attorneys who have vast DISD experience have listed their phone numbers for you. Should you have any legal question, feel free to call them. Any home rule question, these attorneys are available to you. The second list research. You will also find additional research on the flash drive accompanying your notebook. There is a huge amount of research which we would like to make available to you. The final appendix has some resolutions against changing the Dallas Independent School District into a charter district. These are just a selection of the resolutions. In conclusion, you are offering a very big public service to our community. You should be able to do so without any pressure from any side on this issue. Should you or your family feel threatened because of your position, that is wrong. I believe it is also illegal. Should you want to discuss this with an attorney, feel free to call Ed Cloutman or Sylvia Demers. Ed, if you want to leave, you or the attorney of your choice.
The record reflect the attorney has not solicited business.
Oh, no. This is, my friends, everything we do is pro bono. Everything that we're doing is pro bono. As our introductory note says, we're proud of you. We appreciate what you're doing and we want to be of assistance to you. We meet regularly, at least once a week, and you are always invited to join us. My phone number is on the note that's on the inside cover of your notebook. We're looking forward to your questions, but we have one more present for you, and this one we're very proud of. May we hand them to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just asked Mr. Harris to help us
Well,
out.
there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
Not yet. Oh, I
No, I hope not.
These are books that, these are books that you have had recommended in your seminar, in your community meetings. They're considered to be among the very best books on urban education. The first one, Hope Against Hope, is about the New Orleans School District. Second one, Improbable Scholars by Kemp, is on specific suggestions for urban school districts. And the third one is the last book by Diane Ravitch, Reign of Error. And to be presented at the next meeting, the time when you hear the Dallas Friends of Public Education is Teaching with Poverty in Mind. That one didn't get here in time, so Mike will be presenting that to you when he does it. All of these are gifts of Stop the Takeover and of the Dallas Friends of Public Education. Again, thanks. We're proud of you all.
Thank you. On. See red. Are our mics on? Yeah, okay. Thank you for that presentation. The way we want to do this is, you left. You don't get away that easily. Right?
All I was supposed to do was do that.
What we would like to do as a commission is just go around. If anyone has a question, take follow-up. I know if you want someone else to help answer it, raise your hand and I'll recognize it. We've kind of allocated total 45 minutes, and we've got two other groups, but
yours.
We've run over. So who would, what commissioner would like to go first? Yes, please.
As you know, I'm a school teacher in Dallas, and the people that I work with and the people that I know are afraid to get involved in this. They're afraid to call the phone number and leave messages. They're afraid to email me, even at home. They're afraid to email me. And I can tell you right now, I'm a little shaky myself. I'm not sure how in the world we can't get teacher input if they're afraid to give it, and I don't know how to.
Let me make a suggestion. We all of us in this room are joined at the hip. We're Stop the Takeover. We're Dallas Friends of Public Education. We're part of the Alliance. We're part of our friends, our community, our schools. We're part of NEA. We have addressed that, and we believe that your best bet is probably to have them contact either their NEA representative or their Alliance representative and ask that those comments, questions, problems, challenges be presented to you anonymously through their organization. Brenda, did I say it right? So, but we believe that what you're saying is a real issue. We do not think it is one that should be poo-pooed. It is wrong and it is bad, but it is real.
Even my administrators are afraid to say anything to me.
Okay, so we're going to just make sure the commissioners, and then we'll be interactive.
I have a quick question
Yeah.
off of what she just said. What do we do about the teachers that are not part of NEA or the Alliance?
They can still send their questions.
We can still send them to any.
Rena and NEA will take any questions from any of you.
The other thing is, real quickly, Diane Birdwell with NEA and DFPE. I've outlasted 7 superintendents and 3 attempts to get me fired. And nothing's going to happen to them, because what saves me is the fact that I do it in the light of day. I am brave enough to speak up, and if more teachers would speak up, a lot of our problems would go away. There is no fear I have in speaking to any of the members on this commission whatsoever, because they were chosen to represent the community on this issue. Now is the time. You tell them if they are afraid, call me. If they don't want to call anybody else, I've already got a target this big on me anyway. But
Yeah.
I'm still here because what we're doing is out in the open.
Yeah. Well, it's a real issue, and it's sad that it is.
What next, Commissioner Ranger? I'll just go in order.
I would just like to say, and probably I'll listen to other commissioners, but I just like to say, I personally think this Stop the Takeover association of citizens who are concerned about maintaining a true public school system for a quality of work that I think will not be exceeded by anyone in this process. the work that you've done, as far as I'm concerned, is a definitive work on many of the important aspects of home rule. And I not only am impressed with it, but I mean, I know the kind of hours that must have been spent to do this. You have an excellent group of people, and it's a little bit different than being a reformer and being a concerned citizen. Concerned citizens really come to these kinds of things with nothing other than just a true desire to help, you know, and that's it. And that's what I see from this group. But I would say that you've given us a terribly important document that this commission can use to frame an awful lot of our discussion about this issue. And I personally thank you for it. I have about 100 questions.
Let me comment on that, Marcus, in that this is not anything that we did alone. We did this after listening to all of your meetings. We have been to all, some of us have, at least one of us have been to every one of your, including the one last Saturday at Pancho Madrano, I might add. In any event, we have been to all of them, and we've listened to you, and we've listened to what you've said. So we really give credit to lots and lots of people for what we've done. It's not our work; it's a compilation of a lot of people. Thank you, though, Mark.
Thank you.
You want to yield to Commissioner Blackburn?
I appreciate your comments and the homework, and I look forward to reviewing it.
Any a question?
Well, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Reed.
I don't have any questions, but I do thank you for a basis to kind of do some reviewing. I think Julie kind of covered my question in terms of teachers and other staff members fearing retaliation and not wanting to take part in this very important process. So I thank you for sharing your information. I have no questions.
All right. Well, same here. I want to thank you for all the information. It is a lot of information here that we needed for the commission.
Takes about an hour and a half to read through it. Do that.
I do have a comment. I do see a lot of misinformation from a lot of the parents. I know that they have a lot of comments that doesn't even relate to the home rule. You know,
There's a lot of misinformation that has accompanied this since the very beginning, and we appreciate that you're straightening that out.
And this will help straighten a lot of things out as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the information. It's excellent. And I'm one that always throws rocks at the turnip trucks when they come down the street because this is, you mentioned something about next week, Poverty in Mind. I'm more and more interested in how the, other people view poverty as the huge elephant in the room, and where that goes, and how in some cases it's always kind of, glossed over. And that's, to me, very important because Dallas is a very needy city for children who are in education.
What number are we? Somebody, in terms of poverty, we're third.
We're number one.
We're number one in some areas and third in others. The Dallas Morning News yesterday addressed this as an editorial. I think, Ron, the good news is that there are people who are concerned about it. The mayor has a task force. Our member, who was a city council person, served on the early part of that task force. We cannot forget the role that poverty plays. And there are some suggestions that we had for the city council.
Right.
We sent them 10 suggestions, which John prepared for us. And he is going to prepare 10 suggestions for the business community, right? That is going to happen, right, John?
We're working on it.
Well, I like you. It's not an excuse, but it's a reality.
It is a reality.
Say it's not is that's just poor.
It is a
That's
reality.
a poor excuse for dismissing it.
You're
So,
absolutely right.
thank you for coming, and I appreciate it.
Ron?
Doctor, thank you for the presentation. It was excellent, and thank you for the materials. I look forward to reading the books that you've presented us. I have numerous questions, however, As the chairman said, I only get one question first, and we'll go around. My first has to do, and I noted that you did address it in the governance section, November elections. As I listened throughout the community meetings of those that said, move forward and it will help us because more people will be involved in elections and therefore we will get the type of representative we need as a trustee. That was one theme that I heard out there. Can you please address November elections?
I'd love to.
Other than what you wrote in here, because I've already read that.
First of all, DISD has had that opportunity on several occasions.
Yes, they have.
And it has been debated, and the decision was that a partisan election in November would be a disservice to our schools. But a much better solution is to look at the root of why people don't vote. You're very fortunate. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from Pat and the League of Women Voters. And they have done a study of why people don't vote. And it ain't because they don't vote in November. It's not. It has nothing to do with the time of the election. It has to do with educating people that elections are important. And that education ought to take place in our schools, and it does not. There are a few isolated places where individual teachers have taken it upon themselves to do a really good job. But we as a group do not educate our children on why they should be elected, nor do we show them in their school setting that elections are important and make a difference. We ought to let our children start making decisions by having elections in kindergarten. But we don't do that. We tell them where to sit, we tell them how to walk in line, we tell them what they're to do, and they don't get to try out what it feels like to be in a democratic, voter-driven elected setting. And all of those are things that we can do, and they don't cost money. They're things that we know will work, Jerome.
Harriet, this is just a follow-up.
Yeah,
not a different.
Same question.
Following up on that, you had made the statement that doing a November election would be disastrous. You having been a nonpartisan elected official and a partisan elected official, can you please expand on that for the audience? Sure.
Well, as you know, in May, the elections are nonpartisan. We elect mayors and our city council and so forth. And they are not partisan. They are neither Democratic nor Republican. They probably are Democratic and Republican, but they do not run under that auspices. In November, the elections are partisan. Commissioners, legislators, federal and state officials. The question is, what would happen if we threw a school board race into a November setting? Would it not be that they would almost have to choose a side? They'd almost have to be on the Democratic slate or the Republican slate, or they'd just be out there floating in nothing. And that would be, we believe, that would be a very bad thing. And interestingly enough, if you look at the statistics on our races, the races for school board are about the same as the races for city council and for mayor. But you don't see the mayor or the city council saying, we want to be elected in November. They're not saying that. And that's because they know that wouldn't be good for them. So that's our reasoning, Jerome. And by the way, this is an issue that your father and I discussed some 45 years ago.
He hasn't shared that
45 years ago.
I
When
believe
he had a restaurant, I taught at Mountain View College, and I had lunch with him almost every day. And your mom and your dad and I talked about this very thing then in his restaurant. You weren't old enough to talk then, but he...
Thank you.
Let's just keep the age out of it. My mustache was red when I started here in Dallas.
Jeff.
Dr. Earhart, thank you for all of the books and the materials as well. I am interested in, I think it was Bill Lee that said democracy is messy at one of the meetings that we had. And I'm interested, I don't see how home rule really improves educational outcomes, but we have this large community in Dallas that feels like the governance structure is slowing us down. The meetings are dysfunctional. They portray our school district as dysfunctional. They portray our school district as racially divided. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on how we can have a governance structure that is functional. And I understand from the presentation that there's probably very little we can do to change the governance structure, even under home rule.
Legally, in terms of the action, yes, that is correct. And that is, it falls not under the education code. The governance structure falls under the election code. And one of them falls specifically under a code that was written only for DISD. The 9 single-member districts was a DISD law, bracketed only for DISD in 72, Marcus, or 72, Ed, was it 73? 73, in 1973. And not only would that law have to be changed, but our smart people that are attorneys think that it might even take a judicial ruling to change it. So forget about changing it yourself. You really can't do that. Now, can we make the governance that we have work? You're darn right we can. We've had an opportunity. We've been very fortunate. Stop the Takeover. We've had some of your sitting members of the school board asked to meet with us also, and we are honored when they do so. Our suggestion is that they get their act together. Our suggestion is that they could call upon resources to show them how to be more effective, and they could do that. Now, that having been said, I served on the school board too, and a lot of people thought we were dysfunctional also. It's kind of the nature of the beast. And there's not, and it's not bad. Now, it is bad when it goes to 2 o'clock in the morning, but it's not bad to have people argue about what's best for our children. And so I'm not
May I
sure.
follow up right there? I believe
Same
that,
question only,
I believe
Jeff.
that is the key dividing point is that where the work stops on what's best for our children and where the work starts for what's in the best interest politically or business-wise for
Let's
for
be very
trustees.
specific. Let me be very specific. One of the criticisms that some of our school board members make are that some other school board members take a long time to ask about how much things cost and is this really the right way to spend the money and is this has this been completely vetted? Well, maybe one of the reasons they ask that is because DISD administration has given them reason to question it. So one of the things that might help our school board work better is if trust could be developed based on fact. If in fact they could be trustful of the administration because the administration was always honest. And we do not believe that that is the case.
All right.
Y'all did that. You can't clap. You can't clap for yourself.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate the resources quite a bit. The book Hope Against Hope was actually on Google Play for $1.99 last week, so I've already started
darn.
reading.
We didn't
I know,
pay,
but
we paid more than that.
no, I have a library at home, and I love to have real books nowadays. But I want to kind of piggyback on what's been talked about. I will say next time maybe we think about starting over here if I'm ready, because my comment has changed a couple times. But the first thing I want to say, just kind of commenting on some themes that have been going on. You talk about the election process, you talk about civic engagement, you talk about getting children involved early. That's exactly what's going on here today. It's very exciting to see all you familiar faces who I've read about coming out here every single week interested about the stuff that we're doing. I think it harkens back to an article in New York Times earlier this school year that talked about teaching and educating kids is the people business. You cannot always rely on data-driven and reform processes that are going on. So let me say that. My comment and question revolves specifically around the amendment process. A lot of parents, a lot of people who don't understand what's going on, people will say to them, hey, don't you want to make the school district better? Hey, don't you want local control of the school district? Can somebody speak on the amendment process? What's the problem with that? I mean, I understand. I want to hear it.
What's the problem with passing this as letting the public?
Correct. Opening the doors to it.
One of the things you're going to hear is, well, why don't we just let the public decide? Well, why don't we just let the public decide? One of the reasons is that you have spent more time as individuals than 99.99% of the people in DISD have spent on this same issue. You ought to know better than they do about what is best for our children. You were asked to make those decisions, and so voting on things is not always a really good idea. I've shared this story with some of you before, but there's the first grade class that had been taught about how important voting was, and a cat wandered in the room, and one of the little boys said, is that a girl cat or a boy cat? And one of the other children said, let's vote on it. Well, it really, it really doesn't work like that. And so to say everybody out there vote on whether this is a good idea, I like California and I love to go there, but you only have to go and look at how California deals with their referendums to know it is a disaster to have the public vote on everything. We have a representative government, and we should represent the people who ask us to serve, and that's what you're doing. Now,
I'm just watching the clock, and the chair does have a question, believe it or not. Yes, you can elaborate.
Well, I just wanted to add, I think Mr. Melanson is asking also not only about the amendment process, which is a very laborious, unless,
I'm sorry. I see what
the legislature changes and takes off some of the voter requirements, then it would be actually very easy to do an amendment. Now they are single amendments addressing a single thing in the charter, but understand, I was on the board of a charter school that we were trying to get going. And when you write a lot of things into the charter, you don't put a whole lot of really specific things, because if you have to go back and change the charter, you have to go back to the State Board of Education. On this one, you would have to go back to the voters every time you want to change anything. So a lot of things you will leave to the discretion of the governing board. The governing board can then set policy, which can be changed at any time. So for example, you could say the school start date will be determined by the governing board. The governing board can then decide and change it at will anytime. The voters will not weigh in on that decision. It's a very important decision, but just like with us, we don't decide when DISD has their spring break. In fact, they changed it in the, very shortly. So we don't, the voters didn't weigh in on that. So it will be the same with the charter school. Many decisions will be left to the governing board. And the governing board, we went through a lot of this, but the governing board, how they set up the trustees don't necessarily have to be the ones who actually run the schools. They can turn it over to a management company. They can do a lot of things that will be at their purview because it's not specified. The powers and duties are not specified in the law. So you open this up and it can be changed not only by policy by whoever's governing this home rule charter district, but also the legislature can come in and make specific changes to home rule charter school district law that then will apply only to you, not to anybody else in the Texas Education Code. So if they do what Harriet mentioned before, they had laws last time that were proposed that did not pass for taking away educator certification, taking away all of Chapter 21, taking away all class size limits, and many other areas. And we know from what we've talked to the legislators now that a lot of this is going to be proposed and more, and especially the streamlining of home rule law. as far as taking away voter turnout, so that at a low May election, you could actually do the charter. And if only 800 people voted, so be it. So your question is an excellent question about the amendment process as well as the policy process, because it shows you how, in fact, one of the big questions that came up when I was discussing this with the TEA General Counsel, Von Bayer, who has just replaced David Anderson there, I asked him what could happen, and I said, am I being alarmist, or is this a real problem? Could it be a bait and switch? Could the charter be wonderful, have universal pre-K, a pool in every school, because we want to make sure that all children learn to swim and don't drown anymore. Just, the sundae with whipped cream, cherries, nuts on top, everything. And then when it starts operating, they don't do those things. Who enforces it? Nobody. No one knows what a material violation is. You would have to sue. You would have to have a lawsuit. So it could be a giant bait and switch. You could put in a charter all these things,
All right.
and then it could not be that way.
That's right.
You're almost as good as Dr. Aaron.
She is my mentor.
If we have a couple of minutes left.
Got a question.
Oh, good, okay.
All right. First of all, you can be chair of the commission from here on.
Oh, no, I can't. There is no way. I am so
But I've just learned
in awe
something.
of
We're
you
going to
all.
keep extending questions. I get it. So we don't want to model with all our. And first, for the record, let me recognize Commissioner Blackburn's here for the quorum. Came in after it was called. He's attending me. And Trustee Parrott, Bruce, I blanked on your name. I apologize. Raise your hand. He's staring at me right there in the front row. But if you've been listening to these, I'm known for my faux pas in identifying public officials, so you now join a long list of them. But my question is, and this is what, the materials, I'm sure are great, the book's great, but, what is an end game for us?
Okay.
And so what, no, let me ask the question. Let me ask the
that
question.
was the question.
No,
Oh.
that's you want to run the meeting?
No, I don't.
By the way, we're friends, so let's put that on the record. So we have a certain level of kibitzing going on. So the comment you made that you didn't want to put any specific recommendations about how to improve the DISD because it would be inferred or somehow supportive of what could then be enveloped into a charter. But you also used the comment, a report of findings. Help me understand the difference, because I think many people have at least voiced to me, if you lay something on the table, don't vote, quote unquote, to compel a vote. You have a document. So what is the difference in your mind in terms of an end product, if you will, the difference between a report on findings but not saying here's 100 things that support better education here?
Okay, that's two really different questions. First of all,
I'm
as I
extending
said,
the first question.
the first one, why did we not do that? And that is because we have all talked together. All these groups that you're having that we know about, and we've divided up who's going to do what. And we're not the group that's going to tell you what wonderful things DISD can do.
Gotcha.
Those things need to be told. But we as a group
So it's
are
just group
telling you why
specific.
we should
Got
stop
it.
it.
Got it.
But in answer to the second part of your question, what is this list of findings? There is some question, and you need to explore it, whether you really ought to think about yourself as a group that reports back to the trustees. We first thought that that was what you would be doing. But in a sense, you may decide that you are totally independent of the trustees, and that it is neither your responsibility nor maybe even your right to do that. And if you make that decision, you still have an incredible amount of information. And you might choose simply to compile that information as a list of findings and give it to every single Chamber of Commerce and
distribute it.
everybody else, including your DISD trustees, but not think of yourself as a committee for the trustees. And I think that might be something you might want to consider.
It's very helpful. Okay,
One-
so, yeah.
Can
Go
I
on,
do
yes.
one last thing?
Yeah.
Ed, would you come up here and let everybody see who you are? This may be the end of our friendship, but what would you do if a teacher called you and said, I'm afraid to say anything?
Harriet, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to put him on the spot. He's rendering legal advice. Ed, yeah, that's not pertinent. No,
But it
you
is
know,
amazing.
we're gonna speak to how teachers can get on the record at the end of the meeting.
Okay, that's good. I just
We're gonna talk
was
about that.
uncomfortable at not having,
No,
having addressed.
So I'm trying to watch the clock and also be sure the commissioners. And second question, we have two other groups. So you have all their contact information, and Dr. Arrett and your group, we appreciate being able to directly access you if we're
me and
you know,
contact
we move on to
anybody.
the next group.
I think Luke.
Commissioner Blackburn, did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Arrow, again, thank you for being here. And with all the talk about governance, my mind goes back and forth. It's like at one point, okay, we need to trust the state legislators through the Texas Education Code.
I never said that.
Hey, let's not trust them because they may do something different. But my concern is about the local governance and with the Dallas School Board. In terms of, especially with your experience of having been on the board, and I won't go into the details of were there things that you felt handcuffed and restricted that you couldn't do, but from that standpoint, I'm trying to get back to my question in my mind, but from that, do you think there are areas in which not current board, but in which our current structure could be allowed to do more? Would that be beneficial in any way?
We've asked school board members the question, is there any law that is keeping you from doing what you should be doing for the children? Anything that curtails any educational decision you want to make? And none of them have ever said one thing. Now, the legislature needs to reinstate the money. When I was on the legislature provided 80% of the funding for DISD, 80%. It's now hovering at 30%. Now that's a significant difference in what it means to our district. And can the legislature do something about that? They sure can. And I think every one of you ought to lobby for making that happen. But laws that keep us from being able to educate our children, saying you can't teach, one school in North Dallas has a psychology course for gang members. Gang members are attending a psychology course in one of our comprehensive high schools, and the teacher says it's working great. What a wonderful idea. There's nothing that says we can't do that. We've had 12-month schools. Nothing says we can't do that. We can have schools for longer days. We can use the schools as after school facilities. We can do all of those things that any of us might want to do. And you only have to walk into our schools to see how different they are. To say that we have cookie cutter schools is to be absolutely oblivious of what's going on in DISD. Thank you.
One, okay, follow up. Okay, I want to get the other two groups.
No, let's do the other two.
Okay. So here, like our public meetings, if we would hope you would stay and engage us, but we do owe our other two groups tonight time. Ms. Ragza? Yeah.
Concerned about voting. I think the commissioner mentioned that. And really, you know, the key here is that it's an unnecessary election. When we recognize that almost everything that the board wants to do, it can be done. And so what makes it, so why is an election necessary in the first place? So no, we're not afraid of people voting, but it's an unnecessary election because whatever they desire to do, they can do it through the existing system. I just want to reemphasize that.
Good point.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Bob.
You sure you don't want it?
No, I am positive about it.
I
Mr. Chairman, mind if we take a brief recess?
We have 2 more groups
Yeah,
to do.
well, let me say, so if anyone needs to take a quick step out, just take a step out. I think next on our agenda was Dr. Wallace, the NAACP Dallas Chapter 6169, and Dr. Juanita Wallace. Make yourself. Is that water available for our speakers? Or are they sharing a bottle?
Yes, it's fine.
Let me just say, when we now know how little the state is supporting the district, we're being very careful about the bottles of water. And we welcome you and thank you for visiting with us tonight. We appreciate it. Let us all get your handout. Don't forget the mic, and you have to say your own name officially, I was just told. So
Juanita Wallace, Dallas Branch NAACP. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm going to talk with you briefly about some information, but specifically I'm going to talk to you about what we envision as a community school. And based off of that information, we decided that we would go ahead and write a resolution here on the local level. 6169 is our branch number. And with that being said, we sent it to the state, it was approved, we sent it to national, and now it becomes a national resolution coupled with another branch, Kansas City. And you'll see that, and we'll go through that.
Good.
And then on your website, you should already have Home Rule Takeover question and answer. I turn that over to your chair and ask him to go ahead and post that for you, because it is data, documented information that you can go to the appendix and see that this information is research-based. So we'll go ahead and get started. 60 years after the landmark Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education, that firmly established a right to equal opportunity and equity of resources. And I know you spoke about resources. Oftentimes in our poor communities, we don't have the adequate resources. We don't have the competent teachers, and a lot of things we don't have. So if we don't have it, then the children are left without it. We still have a long way to go here in DISD, but you as the commissioners can make a difference. And I appreciate the fact that you decided to allow someone to put you on this commission. And with you being on this commission, accepting that position, then we're looking for great things from you. I believe that every child deserves a high quality public education in their own. Did I say public education? Sure I did. Public education in their own neighborhood, and that schools and communities are extensible link. If you get rid of a school, an elementary school, a high school, you are also getting rid of the community. Critical elements of sustainable community schools, building on incorporating more than 20 years of work by advocates, practitioners, to design and implement full-service community schools in high poverty neighborhoods must include the following. You see, middle class, upper class, they take their children to the grocery store and they let them pick out the food. They let them read the labels. They take them to the zoo. They take them on these various vacations. But the poverty-ridden students, they don't get that chance. So if they have those opportunities afforded them in the school, then they too will have the experiences. Critical elements of sustainable community schools, building on 20 years. I said that. I want you to think about that. 20 years of work, advocates and practitioners. To write a charter in a year, it's nowhere compared to 20 years of advocates and practitioners. It's next to impossible. You can't do it. You can't do it, and we don't want you to do it. Engaging, so this is what we want in a community school. Engaging, aligned, culturally relevant and rigorous curriculum that includes a robust selection of classes such as art, music, language, Spanish. Yes, Spanish for black children in early elementary. We don't want them taking Spanish in high school. They need to take, especially if they're living in Texas, they must take it early enough, just as the Spanish-speaking students must take English early enough, so that they are bilingual, so that when it's time to compete for jobs, they have an equal opportunity. I'm talking about the African American children right now. Coordinated and result-focused academic wrapped around support such as health care. If your head is hurting, you get to school because you haven't had any food, you can't look at a sentence and tell if it's a noun or a pronoun in it. Eye care. If you're sitting in the back of the room and you can't see up front, what are you going to do? And emotional care. And if you had a fight with your mom, or your mom and dad had a fight the next morning, you go to school, you're discombobulated. You can't think. But if you have some kind of person you can go to talk about that, that can help straighten you out maybe. These services and enrichment supports needs to be aligned with academics and integrated into the school day. Emphasis on high quality teaching and not on high stakes standardized testing. We're testing our children too much. We spend more time testing than we do teaching. And we've got to make sure. Now, most of you went to school. Well, all of you went to school, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking. Yeah, you went to school, and I bet you didn't have all those tests. I bet you did. And look at you now, just sitting up here so bright and wonderful and everything. You didn't have all this. I didn't either. And I'm brilliant. Assessment will be used appropriately to help teachers meet the needs of their students. That's when I taught 11 years in Ohio and only 3 years in Dallas, because only you need to teach 3 years in Dallas so you can become administrator. And I became a reading and writing specialist under Dr. Edwards. And I was a reading and writing specialist in Area 4, McCass, in Area 7, what was this guy's name? Joel Pittman, and Area 5, Dr. Bell. And I taught teachers how to read, to teach reading, and I taught administrators how to teach reading and to teach writing. So you have to be taught to teach reading and writing. And I got my certification from Texas Women University, okay? Positive discipline practices such as positive behavior intervention. We've got to know how to address these issues with the students. Yes, they misbehave. PBIS practice that will reduce suspension, harsh disciplinary practices, and eliminate pipeline to prison. I don't want all the kids, the blacks and the browns, in prison. I visited Huntsville, and when I went there, I just said, raise your hand if you went to Lincoln. They raised a hand. Raise your hand if you went to W.T. White. 1 or 2 raised the hand. Raise your hand. I talked to these students. I said, this is not your life. This is just a bad experience that you're having, but I want you back into society. And that's what we have to do. But we don't want to put them there in the first place. PBIS. Transformational parent and community engagement that leads to active participation in planning and decision making that builds on existing strengths, recognizing the link between the success of the school and the development of the community as a whole. You can't decide things for another adults. People in the community, organizations like myself, businesses, they want to be on the table initially. They don't want you to say, well, you can come over, we've made all these decisions, we made all these plans, you come on over and give us some money, or you can come on over and volunteer. Put us at the table at the very beginning. These are the elements that we build on to compose a resolution that was approved by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And I always say to people, especially the whites that's on our executive board for the NAACP, I say to them, everybody is colored. You're not white. Put your face up against this paper. You're not white. You're colored. You just don't know it yet. Okay? So, I say, do not write a charter. Now go ahead and flip over to the page where we did write our resolution. It's a school privatization threat to public education. It looks like this. Whereas there is an increasing emergence of privatization of our nation's public schools and or the establishment of charter schools within public schools and districts. And I stated to you, this is written Dallas NAACP and Kansas City. And by the way, later on I'll tell you, if I didn't tell you already, we have over a 250,000 people in our NAACP. We have 12,200 branches. We have one in Japan. Go figure that. One in Japan and one in Germany. Yeah. So whenever we meet nationally, everywhere, we always have everybody come together. Continuing. Whereas there are concerns that privatization of school districts would pose a significant threat to the improvement, accountability, continued development, and financial stability of an already underfunded public education system. And whereas conversions of public school to private entities will pose a detriment to the essential safeguards and protection of rights for students, parents, teachers, and taxpaying citizens within public school districts. And whereas in its 210 resolution on charter schools, the NAACP opposed the use of charter schools as a vanguard of education reform. And whereas the NAACP opposed vouchers, yes, in 1978, in 1982, 1985, 1992, 1993, 1997, and 2003, and in 1979 opposed tax benefit to segregate private schools. And whereas privatization of public schools and or the establishment of charter schools within public schools, what we're talking about tonight, school districts divert such needed funding for public education to private or charter schools, thereby further dismantling the viability of the public education system and limiting the number of children who would be afforded the opportunity of an adequate and an effective education, in contravention of the United States Supreme Court 1954 landmark decision in Brown versus Board of Education, which declares that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. We can't have that. We cannot have it. Therefore, it be resolved that the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People opposes the privatization of public schools and or public subsidizing of funding or for profit. And that's what we're talking about. We can't afford that. That $1.5 billion, the district money, and the $1.3 billion for the actual rainy day fund, we can't afford to have people divide that money up and go spend it. Well, maybe they won't spend it. They'll probably put it in a bank, but and save some of it. But we can't afford them to have it. Our children need those funds. They need to have qualified teachers. They need to have those funds being allocated for resources so that they can become contributing citizens. And let me finish this. Be finally resolved that the NAACP calls for full funding and support of high quality and free public education for all children. 2014 resolution submitted to you to the local and national level, been approved by the body, all of the delegates that attended Las Vegas in July 17th through 25th. And it is now part of our record. And we will do everything we can to support this and to defend it. And as I stated to you before, you should already have this piece. Okay.
Get it up online.
So what I need you to do is, once you finish the homework that Harry gave you, just go ahead. Go ahead and start on this right here. And if you have any questions whatsoever. Did our attorney leave? Oh, he left. You know,
I think I must have scared him to death.
oh, I hope not. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Good. We sure we have questions?
Well, see, I asked for it. I do want to say, Dr. Wallace, you skipped one part of the resolution. I'd like to go ahead and read it if you don't mind.
Would you
because I think
mind? Oh, thank you.
it really hits on, your overarching theme.
Okay.
And that is, be it further resolved that the NAACP will continue to advocate against any state or federal legislation which commits or diverts public funding, allows tax breaks, or establishes preferential advantages to for-profit, private, and/or charter schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Boy, now, you know what? You are a good student. Very good student. Paying attention.
Let me put it on the record. I must have had hair when I interacted with you, but you invited me to speak on SAT and ACT prep for the National Day of Action 2 times for the NAACP.
Oh, sweetheart, I thought I remembered you. When this is over, I'm going to give you a hug. I sure am. Yes, sir.
This has to be the most loved public body. Commissioner V.
Dr. Wallace, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
And I wanted to, it's not exactly a question, but it's a good point, I guess, for us to talk about for a second. But are you aware of this research that shows that poor children and better off children do not really learn differently throughout their school years? That it's the beginning, it's the early years, and those things that you cited, it's the enrichment opportunities that really add to the education for children who come from families of more means. And I just wanted to have you
Thank you for
comment
that
on
bit of information, and you're absolutely right. And the reason I know you're right is because when children are almost like sponges, they soak up the information you give them at an early age, but they have to have that foundation. And then when they receive new knowledge, it says that it's almost like a hook. It has to hook on to the new knowledge, hooks on to the old knowledge, and of course, our experiences. And if they don't have that base information, then they have nothing to hook on. So then, therefore, they're almost like lost. But I will tell you, I know this for a fact regarding reading, because my granddaughter, my first granddaughter, I taught her to read at age 4. And I thought I'd just go ahead and throw that out there.
Is it your opinion then that we should be focusing as many resources as possible in that pre-K?
Pre-K, absolutely. The early ages, early grades. That's when you want to. If you can remember, and that's why I was thinking if he was here, if you can remember when we had Vanguard schools that were functioning, and we had resource centers. Most of the resources, I shouldn't say most of the resources, but a lot was targeted for the younger kids so that they will get a real solid foundation. Now, you, a young man, you know, if you build a house, and of course, I've been dealing with that too, D.R. Horton, but that's a whole nother story. If the foundation starts breaking down, then the whole house is going to tumble. So you want to make sure you have a real steady foundation. That's what you want for children.
Thank you, Dr. Wallace. Excellent
you.
presentation. If you could please expand on dual language, and that, currently it's only in a few schools in the DISD.
It's only in a few schools because the superintendent, in my talking to him, I talk to him on a regular basis, by the way, too. We don't necessarily agree, but we talk. He told me that he allows the principals to make that decision. And my remarks to him was, if you allow principals to make that decision, then they're not going to decide on that because it means additional teachers that they're going to use in the classroom in order to do the dual. So my point to you is that anybody out here, if you could encourage him, or if we can come up with some way where he can understand that the English-speaking students need to be taught Spanish at an early age. And it needs to be something coming down from him. I mean, he's scared most of the teachers to death, so why don't he scare the principals into going ahead and doing that? Yeah, I've said that to him, too.
Well, I thank you very much. I would hope that you share this with trustees who are the policymakers and can make
Absolutely.
things
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Wallace, thank you for coming and thank you for the information.
Oh, thank you for.
And I love that. I do love your fourth paragraph. It talks about art, music, bilingual languages, and as Mr. Viese was saying earlier, the ability to have opportunities like language acquisition when you're young, which poverty students don't really get the opportunity. They don't learn the words. They struggle after that. All those things need to be pre-K, kinder, first grade, because once they track behind, they stay behind.
Absolutely.
I mean, the data shows that. So that's and you were right about one thing. When I paint portraits, you have to. It's everyone is brown.
Uh-huh.
And what degree of brown they are,
Exactly.
it depends. That's hard to believe, but when you teach that and when you do it, you understand that we all are of color.
Yeah.
And what scares me, and this is just a comment from myself, is how we fear color. We fear differences in people, and unfortunately, that trickles down to students. And I think, as a commission, as a district, as a city, we need to educate students and educate ourselves at the same time.
I don't think we necessarily fear color, but it's almost culture differences.
Right.
If everybody could understand that the differences did not make you any better or any less, then people will start understanding that it's okay to be a friend with a person that's different from you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm going to piggyback on what they're saying. I totally agree that all kids should be bilingual, not trilingual.
Absolutely. Now you're extending it. I love that. Uh-huh.
Learn the better we are as individuals. Now, the one thing that baffles my mind a little bit is, like you said, we need a good foundation for the children.
Yes.
We need to learn from the bottom. What baffles my mind right now is the way that the district does everything as far as pre-K and kindergarten. If you don't have the resources to, let's say, go to a private daycare, the city provides that for the children. But if you make more than a certain tax bracket, you're not allowed to go or take your children to school. And those kids are missing out on that foundation. If you're middle class, your children are not going to get to go to school until a year later, which everything is provided for lower income families.
You think everything is provided? I'm not quite understanding you.
Well, I've seen it in certain cases where if you're making above a certain tax bracket, your children are not going to go to school.
I can elaborate on that.
Yes.
What happens is, in order to go to pre-kindergarten in a public school setting, you have to meet income qualifications. I have seen parents, their children are turned away because they make a few dollars too much, versus if you are receiving government assistance, then you're automatically qualified. Or if your home language survey indicates that you speak a language other than English in the home that's predominant, you automatically qualify. But for the average working parent who's working to support their child, they're turned away because their child is turned away because they make too much money, essentially. And it's not that they're making a lot of money. Exactly.
That is a shame. You got to do something about that.
Exactly.
I'm so proud of you being able to bring that out, because
the whole thing we're talking about is the equality for all children.
Absolutely.
And to be turned away because your parents are making, like you said, $1 or $2 more.
$1 more, yeah.
It's
absolutely. In thinking about it, we have to understand that the prisons are built based off of the fact that black boys may not be reading at 4th grade. So if you don't remember anything else, remember the fact that resources are extremely important so that students will have the kind of resources they need so that they can in fact perform better, because we can afford to have materials and teachers See, we can't forget about the teachers. We can't continue to expect teachers to work, especially if they're qualified teachers, to work without having competitive wages. They must be. In other countries, people just think of teachers as being so great. And for some strange reason here in the United States, we've come to the idea that teachers can be just thrown around, tossed around, and I don't like that at all.
Mr. Blackburn? Commissioner Reese, did you have a question? I didn't mean to.
I just thank you for the presentation of the information. I see a good the foundation that may be shaky just because there are things that are outside of our control, even in terms of enrolling children in pre-kindergarten. And even a step further, I think, as Commissioner Sandell and I were talking, the law says you don't even have to go to school until you're 6, which is first grade. So at that point, I've missed 2 years of very important education that's necessary if I'm going to have success. And for every 1 year that a child misses out, they have to take 2 years to catch up, which means they're in a forever catch-up game. So I think this is good in supporting that. My only question would be if your group would provide suggestions on parental involvement, because as a teacher, I've had parents come and say, I don't know. I don't understand. Can you help me? But then there are those parents that they have their pride. They don't want to ask for help. But in essence, there are, honestly, in our society, our parents are much younger. And they need help and guidance in understanding what to do and how to do it and how to, come forth and say something. So maybe if
parents actually coming to the school, is that what
we get to the school, I've had parents ask for help. My child's having this behavioral issue. What do you think I could do for help? Because sometimes they don't know, and they need help figuring out how to get a grasp on that.
Wraparound services, then we'd have somebody on campus that could actually help the students. But also, there might be a program, and I know we used to have the program when Ms. Gillum was here. We had what we call Selena Butler, and parents could actually go through that program. They learn how to broker the system. But we also have to make sure that the principals are open to receiving people. I know when I was at one of the schools, KB Polk Elementary School, I was assistant principal there, and we had a parent classes, and we had parent room, and we had parent activities, and we had volunteers, and they could go in and out, and they really felt welcome. But you have to lay out a welcome mat for people to come to the school. You just can't make them feel like they're inferior. And oftentimes, even when I go to the schools to visit, I mean, if I wasn't so aggressive, they'd make me curl up and go back, but I usually don't.
Commissioner Blackburn.
I appreciate your comments tonight, and I haven't gone through the other information, but I look forward to going through it.
You mean to say you haven't started on your homework yet? All right now.
Commissioner Ranger.
In terms of the history of the association known as the NAACP, the oldest civil rights organization in the history of America.
That's it.
That has such an illustrious history. Brown versus Board of Education is fought by Thurgood Marshall, who was thorough and he was good. Charles Hamilton Houston, a brilliant lawyer out of Howard Law School. The public did not know about him, but he was a brilliant man. The NAACP, so far as Brown versus Board of Education, and the unfinished business of Brown versus Board of Education, does the NAACP view the nuclear option of home rule charter school district as a nuclear option that is consistent or inconsistent with the promise of Brown versus Board of Education? In other words, Brown attempted to destroy the notion of separate but equal. Does the NAACP view the charter school movement as evidenced by the nuclear option of a home rule charter school district that in essence takes a very broad approach to creating a certain type of charter school environment? Does the NAACP consider that to be inconsistent with the promise of Brown versus Board of Education?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think that we should appreciate those of us who understand the struggle.
I do.
And struggle is never not only finished, but we have to continue to refight the same struggles over and over again.
That's what we're trying to do.
But for those of us who understand that and understand the organization that you represent, it's a tremendous achievement for the role that you have played as the local organization in helping to advance this to the national level. Those of us who do understand that, we know what that means.
You know the struggle.
So, yes. So we thank you for doing that and for bringing it to us. And I think this will be very helpful to the commission as well in representing the oldest civil rights organization we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Sandell?
I had a question because we continue to hear about positive behavior intervention support, PBS, PBS. Is there somewhere that we can get real information about what that is, what it means?
They're on the list and talk to their group to.
I keep hearing that and I don't know what it is.
We're just trying to get them on a schedule.
Thank you.
And to chime in, there are some schools that have piloted this program, and I don't really want to call it a program. I think more of a strategy. Would you call it a strategy, Ed? It's more of a strategy. It's a means by which teachers and parents and principals interact with the children. With that being said, and I think Diana's back there. She knows all about it. But anyway, with that being said, some schools are trying it, and they have shown a lot of success with it. So when we can finally convince our superintendent that it needs to be in all of the schools, then we can see a tremendous amount of less suspensions, other kind of things to go on.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing from that group then.
Yeah. In fact, we had a nice conversation just trying to kind of tee up how we're going to get everybody heard. So thank you. You've been very patient to get to this evening with us.
Whoa.
And one question, just one.
My God.
I'm beginning to feel like Rodney Dangerfield. You ain't getting no respect. But would you and Harriet kind of tee that up together, right? So first, I really appreciate the resolution, and I would say, particularly as we're looking at the environment in which we're going to be operating after the November election that was brought in, and though that is not specifically germane to us, the issue about funding is one of the groups that we have committed to examining budgets and funding. So I think this will be very helpful. But my question specifically is around your sense of high-stake testing. Too much, too frequently, reduce it. Is that the intent on that paragraph?
Yeah, just too much testing. If you look at some of the other school districts, I came from a school district, they only gave 2 tests, and my 4th grade students were reading at a 12th grade level. You quiz or you test, you can test orally or verbally or whatever, but you test just to find out what they don't know so you can teach it. You don't necessarily test it just to punish them constantly, and certainly to punish the parents, because when the kids are trying to study and memorize that, it's just like cramming for an exam. When I crammed for an exam, or when I was in college and I crammed for an exam, 3 days later I wouldn't know anything that I studied for. But if the teacher's given the opportunity, and that comes with creativity within the classroom, if teachers given the opportunity to look at the skills and talk to the students about it more than just, what's that, DOL and AOL and all that stuff that you guys be doing, and you got to be on time, you got to be doing this, if you're given the opportunity to make sure the kids understand it, and you work from the bottom up, Bloom's taxonomy, with the knowledge and the skill comprehension on up the ladder, then the kids are going to understand it, and then you have them go ahead and take what they know and make something totally different, which is synthesis. But they got to be able to analyze it in between, and you move them up the ladder of Bloom's taxonomy. The whole point is you can't just cram. You got to have time to teach, and the time to teach is taken away when you're testing.
I thank you very much, and I appreciate you being here.
Can I go now?
Yes. For the record, I have no title called principal in anything that I'm doing here. So our third group is the League of Women Voters of Dallas, and there you are. I got my glasses. I can't see. Come on up. Come on up and introduce yourselves. We appreciate your being here. Which mics are we?
Also, the ceiling mics are alive too.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Either one.
Okay, let her know.
And there is water.
She's going to be the primary speaker.
Okay.
Is there any handouts?
So if you will just tell us who you are and welcome. We appreciate your wanting to visit with us tonight, and welcome, and we're ready.
Okay, thank you. I'm Pat Vaughn, the president of the League of Women Voters of Dallas, and we really appreciate being invited to speak with the commission this evening to share our thoughts on the important topic of public education. And we really appreciate your time and work on improving our schools. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. League positions on issues are reached through thorough study and consensus by our members. Since the idea of home rule for DISD was presented last spring, we have offered public education forums with representatives from all sides to help the public better understand this issue. Each forum included a representative from Save Our Public Schools, an attorney familiar with the laws providing for development of a home rule district, a person with current information about DISD, and a person who had studied the implications of converting to a home rule district. We also developed a list of potential changes to our educational system and whether or not they can take place under the current system and under home rule. And we will make that comparison available to you. Susie Bell Gosley has coordinated our educational forums, has chaired the committee to study the issue, and has attended most of the public forums offered by the Commission to get public input. I've asked her to present the information about the League of Women Voters positions related to this issue. Susie Bell?
Thank you, Pat. I too would like to extend a special thank you for having the chance to speak to you. Having 2 minutes in a public forum would really be inadequate. I am Susie Bell Gosley, and I'm the Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Dallas. The League of Women Voters supports equal rights and equal opportunity for all, promotes social and economic justice, and the health and safety of all Americans. The League supports an effective and efficient public independent school system, an education institution that reinforces the democratic process and the American economy, and equal access to quality education so that everyone has equal rights and equal opportunity. The proposal for home rule threatens the right to an education for all children. Education is a fundamental human right and is essential for the exercise of all other human rights and interconnects with a staggering diversity of issues. Having an education promotes individual freedom and empowerment and creates development of benefits to the individual and the public good. Thomas Jefferson stated, "Educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for preservation of our liberty." Additional research has led the League of Women Voters to come to the decision that charter schools do not necessarily lead to a higher level of education. A study by the League of Women Voters in Florida found that the charter schools spend more on administration than public schools, and they do not get better academic results. Other studies have shown that there's no guarantee that education will improve. Education is a powerful tool by which all people, including economically and socially marginalized adults and children, can lift themselves out of poverty and participate fully as citizens. The preamble of the Constitution states, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America." We must provide quality education for all of our children to fulfill our obligation as citizens and to create the reality of the principles of our founders for now and in the future. Education is recognized by civilized people around the world as a fundamental human right. Dallas Independent School District Home Rule Commission is appointed to frame a home rule school district charter that creates a framework for educating children. The League of Women Voters supports the current independent school district and not a home rule charter. The League recognizes that the characteristics of quality education are constantly evolving and improvements will be made. The current system allows for that evolution. Please see the League of Women Voters handout. Compare it. It's a comparison. And I will hand that to your administrator, on how the current system to a home rule structure has been given. The state law on home rule is unclear and could lead to the district into years of court decisions with the intention of clarifying those operational systems, thus diverting needed funding for educating Dallas children. We are an experiment. The Texas Education Advocacy Agency states that Dallas ISD has an enrollment of 437,642, making it the fourth largest school district in the country. The average salary of Texas public school teachers is 31st in the U.S. Dallas Independent School District has 88.2% of its children qualifying for free school lunch. Texas children rank in the bottom 10 states of those living in poverty and ranks 50th in the percentage of the population who have high school graduates. If Texas and Dallas want to be first class, it must do better in educating all children and youth. There is no guarantee that home rule will improve our statistics. The League supports public independent schools. We believe that increasing children's access to quality public education improves quality of family and community life, skills, employment rates and stature, and real wage levels. The League of Women Voters supports equal access to quality education. Both phrases, equal access to and quality education, recognize that equality and quality are inseparable. The League recognized that the quality of education is always evolving and being redefined to improve the system to allow children to achieve in their highest level. The goal to reach quality public education for all children can be achieved for the whole gamut of children between high and low incomes. Individual rights were both an end in themselves and a means by which free individuals in a free society solved many of their problems, wrote William Easterly, PhD, in The Tyranny of Experts. handicapping a segment of our society by not providing quality education for children from families with low income violates educational, political, and economic freedom, increases inequality, and creates polarization in society. The other option of not providing a quality public education restricts opportunities and decreases the option of self-reliant individuals and a flourishing civil society. A good education reinforces and raises Americans' options for a better society and individual pursuit of happiness. The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development released its annual collection of education statistics from around the industrialized nations, showing that the United States trails nearly all other industrialized nations when it comes to educational opportunity and equality. The United States once led the world in educating large numbers of its citizens, but that is no longer true. Compared with most other advanced industrial nations, the United States ranks near the bottom in the share of its working age citizens who surpass the educational attainment of their parents. Dallas can provide the best educational system. The only thing that keeps us from achieving this goal is the will to do it. The current operational system of Dallas Independent School District can achieve excellence in children's access to quality public education and improvement in quality of life. The League believes that adequately funding public education improves access and quality education. Adequate funding in Texas is needed to ensure opportunities for quality public education and effective public participation in all aspects of the classroom and the decision-making process that supports the classroom. The League recognized that a universal definition of quality is always evolving and is dependent on having the best trained teachers and resources needed to educate the children. Teachers need to be paid a fair wage.
That's it.
Public funding of Dallas ISD approved by the Texas legislature and the local level has not been adequate to enable all students to meet more demanding academic requirements and meet the state and locally set goals. State District Judge John Dietz' recent court decision is good news for public school students and parents who've experienced the impact of state budget cuts, such as the $5.4 billion cut to public schools at the state legislative level in 2011. However, in 2013, the legislature restored only 2/3 of those cuts and failed to raise the per-student funding to pre-recession levels. Texas spends $600 less per student than it did in 2009. It is not surprising that the public is frustrated with public schools. But the public has misplaced their frustration on the decision-making system and not on the lack of and inconsistent funding of our public education by our Texas legislature. Cutting state-level education funding has undermined the public education system throughout the state. At a time when the student population is increasing and there's a greater need for additional academic programs and support, the Texas legislature decreased funding for education. When candidates run for elected office for every level of government, they run on a platform that states that they will not raise taxes. However, the children and our society lose. Some business lobbyists and legislators have stated that increased funding for education does not make it better. But businesses do not cut budgets at the time they want to expand and improve their outcomes. They enhance the funds for their business departments, increase standards of their products, and increase resources and personnel to achieve their goals. They are willing to pay the price for better outcomes. Texas children's future, Texas, and the United States culture, economy, and democracy depend on an educated citizenry to compete and achieve our goals. Judge Dietz stated that the Texas future depends heavily on whether it meets the constitutional obligation to provide a general diffusion of knowledge, such that all students have a meaningful opportunity to graduate college and be career ready. He also references research conducted by Steve Murdoch, the former state demographer and former director of the U.S. Census Bureau. If existing gaps in educational attainment and household income levels remain in place, Texas faces a stark future with declining income, higher rates of poverty, and reduced consumer spending, reduced tax revenues, and higher state expenditures. Judge Dietz continues, if Texas can deliver on the constitutional promise of an adequate education and close the educational gaps described in these findings, then Texas would be far more likely to improve its long-term fiscal outlook through substantial increases in household income levels, economic growth, and state revenue. In the executive summary section of the ruling, Judge Dietz systematically lays out facts about state funding for public schools. Texas has adopted a dramatic increase in the academic expectations for students in school districts. To its credit, Texas has adopted college readiness standards for all students, increased graduation requirements, and transition to tougher state-mandated testing. The growing student population in Texas is poorer and increasingly diverse, and undisputed evidence shows that these populations require additional resources to help them meet the new academic expectations. I've listed in the testimony that I will turn into you a number of these statistics, but I'd like to state a few. 3 in 5 Texas students qualify for free and reduced price lunch. Almost 1 in 5 students is an English language learner. At the same time that Texas dramatically increased academic expectations for students, it decreased state funding for public schools, leaving schools without the necessary resources to help their students. Despite enrollment growth, districts lost 12,000 teachers and 15,000 other school employees. Districts were forced to increase class size, eliminate tutors and other instructional specialists, eliminate full-day pre-K programs, and implement other cost-saving measures that have negatively impacted their ability to carry out their educational mission. The results are, there's been a significant decline in the total per student revenues for public education on an inflation-adjusted basis over the past decade. This decline in real per student education spending has even been more pronounced over the last 5 years, even as the economically disadvantaged and English language learner population has continued to grow. Even with partial restoration of funds, Texas still spends $599 less per student than it did in 2009. That's after adjustments for inflation. The loss in revenue has a very real impact on students. Many of the principal strategies that substantial evidence suggests districts could employ to improve student performance, especially for economically disadvantaged and English language learner students, cannot be implemented without additional resources. I'm not going to list those because they're really pretty obvious and I want to save time. But the evidence shows that districts are not meeting their constitutional mandate to educate all students at current funding levels.
That's it.
Texas ranked 49th among all states in per pupil expenditures even before the budget cuts of 2011. The court notes that the level of funding Texas provided to public education was not high, but national standards even before the 2011 reductions. Before implementation of the cuts, Quality Counts, an annual report prepared by Education Week, ranged Texas 49th out of 50 states on per pupil expenditures. I would like to also talk about the increased public participation in DISD policy and procedure discussions. And they will improve the checks and balances on our democracy and create better outcomes in general. The League of Women Voters has stressed the necessity for Americans to be informed, understand, and be active participants in setting public policy at all levels of government and all aspects of the decision-making process. The democratic process often takes longer to make decisions and can be frustrating, inconsistent, and incoherent, but gives individual Americans the opportunity to determine their own future. The public's understanding and participation is essential to the responsible and responsive management of Dallas resources for our young people and DISD. The public has a right to know about educational issues, proposals, policies, and options. Yet there's no direct communication process to inform parents and guardians about DISD policies, procedures, staff, teachers, and students. In a democratic process, everyone participates in policy decisions for the public good. State leaders, school board trustees, and Texans choose the quality of education that individuals want and need. The lack of public participation undermines rights of a young person to a quality education, economic rights, and economic freedom, as it denies access to better opportunities for the future. Voting
Excuse me, Ms. Gosley. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to be I do want to be respectful to the other groups and the time limits that they have.
I think we're the last.
Yeah, but we have the rest of the agenda, so I'm going to ask you to,
Okay, I'm going to give this
15 minutes.
information
Yeah, just
because
turn it
you've
in.
discussed it in the earlier piece,
Yeah.
and I'd like it on the record. Voting is one of the ways to affect public policy decisions. The percent of Texas voting age populations who are registered to vote is 47th, while the percent of the voting age population that votes is 51st in the country. Some of the reasons registered voters do not vote, as revealed in league surveys and other resources, is that they do not understand the issues, know the candidates, and or know the different proposed solutions, and therefore are less likely to vote. If elected officials want to run public education like a business, they can inform their customers, the voters, about their products. Voters adhere to principles, academic research, to education, and understanding the issues to cast their ballot. Informed Americans make informed decisions. Experts in education, such as academia and experienced teachers, should be part of the decision process at the school board and throughout the community. I have a section that is on privatization. I encourage you to read that. I will not.
Yeah, let us be sure we get time to have questions for you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Again, Jeff, question? Sure, we get.
Yes, I'm
raise your
going to
hand.
email you the document, but I have these to hand out.
Okay.
So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yes.
Commissioner Pierce.
I'm particularly disturbed by leaders who are willing to disregard equity in the schools, and as you have described for us, I'm wondering about what the league is trying to do at the legislative level, because we're talking about a lot of things that in some ways home rule is really just a very small part of. And I know you talked about that some, but could
Yes.
you tell us?
Well, we actually do advocacy at the national, state, and local level. So one of our priorities at the state level is increased funding for public education. We will be tracking the home rule legislation. Since our policy that was developed by a study by all of our league members all over the country on privatization, we are concerned about that home rule legislation that will be coming up. And you've heard statements, I won't repeat those, about the possibility of changing the home rule law. So we will be tracking it and we'll be vocal. We often testify at hearings and make individual calls. Our members make calls, but we make official calls. The way we're structured is we have an education issue chair who follows everything and educates everyone on a bi-monthly method. And then during close to the end of the legislative session, we get weekly updates.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to focus in on a subject we brought up earlier, and that has to do with changing the election to November. That the contingent has been made that to do so would increase voter turnout. You briefly mentioned on here that November election has nothing to do with, the voter turnout. I'm a person that goes by best practices. In your best practices, where can you show me a ISD school district has a large voter turnout, and what are they doing that maybe this district should look to do, especially in light of several weeks ago I saw in Scotland there was a voter turnout of greater than 95%, is that right? 95% of the voters turned out there. What do we need to be doing, and where can you cite me an example of best practice of a jurisdiction that has a high voter turnout in the United States?
We've studied that, and we've made lots of comparisons to other counties and other states. And we find that there are a number of systemic problems in promoting voting in our state and in our county, because some of those processes are determined by our county commissioners. And our current county commissioners have made every effort to ensure that names match, for example. But in a way, just that simple example frightens a number of people. Oh my gosh, am I going to get arrested if my name doesn't appear the same? There's a fear, and so education is important. Now, how can a county do that? Because that's where we register with the county, and then the information goes to the state. One is send out notices, just a postcard, the voting times and locations for early voting and election day. In addition, they could also do other things like send the individual ballot. That is done in many regions, to send your specific ballot that's for you with your information. So there are a lot of things that are systemic that either prohibit or encumber the identification cards. 20% of the population of Texas is dependent on public transportation, for example. So they don't have a driver's license, and they don't carry a gun, so they don't have a gun permit. So it's a problem the way our systems are set up for people to have access to the polls.
We have a group that's working now on encouraging more participation in elections, and are doing a lot of different things, such as providing signage to direct people to the early voting locations. That at this election that's upcoming, we're doing a pilot project on putting signs out to some locations to see how much difference that makes in the turnout at those locations. And we're sending out information to some targeted areas to see if that can make a difference in their voting turnout. So it's a project that locally we're working on very actively in trying to figure out some things that can be done to participation. And the county elections department is being very cooperative with us in getting some of these things done.
We're also doing a research project with SMU, so we want to talk about that. It's okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot we could say.
I just want to make sure the commissioners get a chance here.
Yes, ma'am. Very quickly. You were saying that there's a $600 difference between adjusted money from 2009 to now, right? Per student a year,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So for Dallas, if we have 160,000
Inflation.
students,
I'm sorry.
I think in Dallas we have about 160,000 students. That's 90, I guess that's $96 million. So we're getting actually $96 million less a year for education a year now if you adjust for the income from 2009.
A lack of income.
That's a lot of money.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I know you mentioned earlier about the expectation for the students that the expectation has increased, but isn't that a good thing? The more we push the children, the better, or the more things they're willing to learn.
Yes, it is. We want that type of thing. We want improved education, but when it's not funded, then it puts the monkey on the back of the local school board. And as Dr. Earhart stated, the state has decreased. When she was elected a number of years ago, there was something like 80% of the state education budget went to local school districts. Actually, I really hesitate to say that. She has said 30% of the state education funding. Someone stated that in the testimony. But I have seen numbers that it is lower than that, and I couldn't find it. So when the state cuts the funding and puts additional demands on the system, there has to be a way to increase the resources and the teachers who will be able to implement those structural changes so that education is improved. So you're right, it is a good thing, and we totally support additional education. My vision is that every child wants to go to a DISD school.
Thank you.
Mr. Blackburn.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming out, the information, and I look forward to reading the rest
Lot more
of
to
it.
give.
And I will
So
read a
read
lot
it.
more. And thank you to the League of Women Voters in general. My wife and I, the voting guide, whenever we go to the polls, that's usually one of our resources just to be educated. So
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Ranger.
Regarding the teaching profession, there's a general attitude that seems to be prevailing in the reform community, so-called in America, that the way to provide excellence in education is to deprofessionalize the teaching profession. Some people would say that makes no sense. But it seems to be apparent in some of the things that are being proposed. What is the League of Women Voters' position in terms of what it takes to be an excellent teacher, and should the teaching profession be reduced to simply a technical craft where you just have people standing in a classroom but with no authority, no real call to professionalism, but just whatever is imposed on them from the top down. Now, I'm assuming something about the League of Women Voters because I happen to have followed it for a long time. But I would assume that the League is not in favor of deprofessionalizing the teaching profession. And particularly when we have models like Finland, even though they don't have the demographics of America, they have the desire for excellence. And their program has been just the opposite of making the teaching profession so high on the ladder of career professions that they are respected as much as doctors and lawyers or anyone else. So does the League really believe that we're going to ever achieve excellence by making teachers simply functionaries of some kind of top-down imposed agenda?
The League develops positions after study. We don't have an exact position on that particular subject. But on the other hand, we address the issue in a different way. And that is, we believe that we should have professional teachers who are well trained, that have accreditation, that are experienced in their own topic that they are teaching, and are supported with all of the resources that are needed so that every child achieves at the level that they are capable, whether they are different skills of learning, different processes for learning, or different abilities physically. So we believe in public education that supports all children. There is no documentation that lowering standards for teachers, having less training for teachers, creates the best outcomes.
Let the commissioner speak.
Follow up on the resources part of it, because you mentioned your presentation is excellent, and actually we've heard 3 excellent presentations, but you were not about to go into privatization, but you were not able to do that, and I assume we'll have all of your presentation, not just that part of it. But you mentioned that Texas was 49th in resource allocation for our schools and our students, and yet we think we're going to create, for instance, the surveys for the past almost decade have shown that Texas citizens are willing to provide resources for public education, but the legislature will not provide it according to the level that is required. So the League of Women Voters actually believes that resource allocation needs to be increased to our schools in order to support excellence. Is that what I heard you say?
Absolutely. And it's important, too, that our citizens be informed about all of the educational systems. And that responsibility falls at a number of levels. One is the local independent school district, and having accurate information, not just on the web, because everybody doesn't have access to the web, but we still have the public U.S. mail. We can still mail information. So there are procedures that we can inform people about it. I think that having access to information about candidates is another way. So I think one of the benefits of having this discussion is that many of the nonprofit organizations in our community have really grown to know each other and work together in a new way that's been creative and beneficial for our students and for our society as a whole. So I think that it's critical that we get back. We are always on mission. Everything is mission driven, and that is increasing informed citizen participation in the political process. There are difficulties because so many people that are living with very low incomes are working all the time. I know them personally. I hear their stories. And I don't know how they get dinner on the table at night. So, how do we reach these people? We do the best we can, and if you have suggestions, we're happy to hear them.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I had one comment. Earlier this year, there was a Dallas Morning News article, and it was talking about the population of Dallas, the population of Texas, and it talked about the high percentage of people that were OTE, outside the traditional economy. Generations of people that have never held a job, don't intend to hold a job, have no education, their children are going to school. We need to teach them that you get a job, you make money, I don't know what they do for a living, I doubt if it's fun or if it's legal, but there's a huge percentage of people in Texas and in Dallas that are not within any of our traditional systems. They didn't go to school. They may be immigrants. Maybe they dropped out of school. When I taught 7th grade, I had a little girl whose mom kept her out of school every 2 weeks for a couple days to take care of the babies while she did the laundry. She'd been through the 2nd grade. That's all she needed. And I saw that 20 years ago, and I still continue to see children whose parents do not have an education, don't even understand why you would need an education. And so that kind of education is not just voter education, it's like why we are here, what we do. And I hope that you guys can help with that, but every time I see OTE, I think outside, my husband goes, they're drug dealers. I go, oh, Okay, I mean, I don't know, I couldn't figure out I couldn't figure out what it meant, because they didn't want to define it, but then I figured out, we have a huge percentage in Texas, that's one of our problems.
Again, Texas is usually either 47th to 51st. We've been behind Guam in providing human services.
I wondered how we...
In our state, yes, I had to clarify that. We are not kind to poor people, basically, because we don't provide the mental health services, the drug and alcohol rehabilitation. We don't provide the family supports that are needed to keep these families afloat. So, as a general statement, they are very mixed. We know people who have mental illness and the child is staying home to help care of a mentally ill parent. It's difficult when you don't have additional supports and a basic ground level insurance of income. Even our food stamp program is terribly underfunded. I don't know how those people make it. Our pantries are often empty at their faith communities. So it's a very complicated issue. And since we are a multi-issue organization, we see the interconnectedness of all of these issues, and it affects the quality of education at the individual level, and it affects processes for children just to get to school. Thank heavens we feed the kids at school. I had one child say to me, summer is the hungriest time of the year.
Thank you. I'm going to reserve my question. Do you want to add in the back? I said we'd recognize Mike.
I'd like to address Commissioner Harris. He wanted some data on elections. It actually happened in Dallas when Commissioner Flores, when the board went from 3 to 4 years, and the Attorney General said you can't do that. We ended up having an election with Commissioner Flores in November. And so what we found was, you're absolutely right. In May it's abysmal. But in that election in November, it was still abysmal, just an uptick, just a little bit of an uptick. So really, it's not elections in November, it's elections in November on the odd years with the governor and the presidential election that will bring out everyone. And that's going to be difficult to do with 9 board members.
I want to thank everyone who's been here with us tonight. It was a great exchange. We're going to take a 10-minute recess, and again, thank you all. If you have written material, turn it in. We'll come back in 10 minutes.
8:27 now.
Call the neighbor. She's okay.
Okay, are we on? All right. The Home Rule District Charter Commission meeting, October 6th, Monday evening, is now back in session. And again, I just think we had a spectacular evening of learning and challenging how we think about our mission. And we need to be deeply appreciative of everyone who participated, and we will make sure as documents come in that they're circulated. And again, I'll have a little bit more to say about where we are on our website. So if you will look at your agenda, and I'm looking at the clock, I'll just want to just tell you where we are. So before we get to that, the next item was just kind of talking about the 2 transcripts from our Madison and Gilliam meetings. Mr. Harris worked tirelessly to try to get us Greiner and Roberts. There was a little technical hiccup on the Greiner that we're trying to resolve in the first 10 minutes with the transcription, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. I was hoping we could get those to you so we'd have all 4. And you'll notice on your agenda that the 6B was the rescheduling. Regrettably, for a variety of circumstances, all good. We just could not make a quorum, and we didn't find that out till late. And getting that out in the community. For those of you who had cell phones, I try to call you individually, and my emailing, I'm getting better. I've told most of you that I got locked out twice. Mr. Harris has rescued me because I somehow messed up my DISD password, and after a couple of times, they shut you out. And so, three times, and I struck out twice, 3 times. So I figured if I did it a third time, I wouldn't be chair anymore, but he said it doesn't work that way. So I apologize. So the next item is just to kind of take a few minutes. Do you want to suspend these until we get the other community meetings done and do them all together? Give me a sense of your pleasure on that. The other two, hopefully, we can email you, Mr. Harris, maybe this week. We'll get them resolved. And then we have one more. We do all 5 together. Give me a sense of the group. I'm open.
I don't mind doing them all together. I mean, we're not hearing a whole heck of a lot different.
Right. That's just kind of Commissioner Ranger. Are you comfortable with that, or would you like to?
The suggestion was to do them all together.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're good with that.
You mean the next groups that speak to us?
No, yeah, I'm just saying, we're going to get the transcripts from Griner and Roberts, and then if you look at 6...
My Harry P. Stone? Bob?
Yes, Stone. I'm sorry, Stone. My apologies. And then if you look at item 6B, we have to reschedule District 8. So if we come up with that date, then we would have all 5. I will mail the next set as soon as they're ready to you. Email them, so you'll have 4 to look at. And then, hopefully, our last agenda item under 6B, we will get a date. In fact, with your approval, while I'm on it, would anyone mind if we just look at a date for rescheduling District 8?
Are we going to Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yeah.
Isn't she going to suggest a...
Yes. Yeah, we are trying to contact her, and she was, her son was ill tonight, so we were trying to get a date. I don't know if we were able to reach her. Not yet. So one of the proposals we've been talking about is on
October 21st, Tuesday.
Is a PTA meeting.
Usually it's PTA meetings, and maybe we combine with that at a PTA meeting, that way we would get
So yeah, so we're going to try to propose that to her as well as get her Saturday schedule. We have been asked by several people in the community not to do any more Saturday meetings until the November election, because people who are interested in working on that might not be able to come. And 2, help me out, teachers. There's fair days.
Fair day this Friday and next Friday.
And next Friday is secondary, so that means there's 3-day weekends for elementary teachers and kids, and then 3-day weekends for secondary teachers and
We
kids.
also
next
have ACP viewing on the 25th, I believe, on Saturday. So a lot of teachers and a lot of things will be going on that way.
Okay, so I'm not. Yeah.
I'm very much interested in finding out what Commissioner
Yeah,
Gutierrez...
I think so. Yeah. So let's leave in 6B. If you will grant me some discretion to visit with her, and I will email you some proposed dates. Both thinking it might be a Tuesday, if that works for her and her community in that district, as well as understanding. Mr. Harris knows all these kind of weekend things, right, and ACP things. So if we look at 6B, we'll just suspend that, and I will email you as soon as we have some indication. I was hoping she could get here tonight, but clearly she didn't. So if we go back to the agenda under 5A, we will hold in abeyance a discussion of the meetings. We will get you the other 2 meetings as soon as the glitch can be done, and then we will schedule the last one, and then at some time out, when we have a regular meeting, we'll have a chance to look at all 5 and see what the pattern is. When I flip through the 2 I hand out, all I will say is some interesting stuff, and there's a pattern, and for you teachers and pattern seekers, I'm sure you can pull out what we're hearing. So I'm going to turn that over, and what I wanted to do, if you go to 5B and you look at 6A, it kind of rolls over, but I wanted to talk about a concept about future presenters and give you an update about where we are. Mr. Harris is here. As you requested, in the last meeting, I was to solicit and provide an invitation to the school board trustees. I asked Mr. Harris to help me. I talked to President Solis and said, how would you like to handle this? We would like you to come and visit with us. We would find a site where we would, be equals and have an exchange. And he went off, and I didn't make it formal. It was the first a soft invitation because I didn't want to embarrass anyone, and I wanted to get the temperature, so to speak. So with Mr. Harris's help and President Solis, he what's the word? He asked, or a message was sent out. I'm looking at our current trustee. A message was sent out asking if trustees would like to participate in a conversation. In fact, I used Commissioner Blackburn, your question, what could we do that would make your job easier, or have from your point of view? I think the response has been minimum.
Yes, here.
Yes, I know it's you. I'm going to give you recognition. So far, we have had, is it three? Yes. 3 trustees, except, and the others have, I'm not usually at a loss for words. Graciously passed. And so the question I would ask you is, do we still, have a conversation with the 3 who would like to meet with us, give the chance for the others who might change their mind, and I need a little feedback before we go forward. So just raise your hand. Okay, Commissioner Ranger.
I'll yield to any other commissioner if you'd like to say.
No, but I'm recognized.
This troubles me quite a bit on 2 levels. It was my understanding that by providing an invitation, first of all, we know we have no authority to command the presence of anyone here. So I looked at it as being an opportunity to extend the invitation, but as I'm hearing this, and as I heard it previously, there has been no invitation really extended. There's been a conversation, and as a result of that conversation, they 3 apparently have said no, and 3 have said they would be willing to do it, but yet there's still no official invitation. Now, frankly, as a citizen, a taxpayer, and I have a representative, it doesn't really surprise me, but on the other hand, I really thought that our process would be, our job is to expend the invitation, their job is to officially handle that invitation. And it's being handled informally as opposed to formally. In other words, a simple invitation can be the Home Rule Commission voted to invite trustees, to provide an opportunity for trustees to comment on the Home Rule School District Charter. If you would like to take advantage of that opportunity, please inform us in whatever way is convenient for you if you would like to do that. It could be as simple as that. If you don't want to answer questions, that's fine, if that's something uncomfortable to you. I don't have any hang-ups about any of that, but I do have a hang-up about the process not being followed through officially, because we made a decision as a commission to invite them. We didn't make a decision to talk to the president, and the president decided upon a process, and we still have not even officially invited them. If they are going to decline, I think their decision should be official. We prefer not to participate in that process, because where we are right now, we're just dealing informally. No official invitation has gone out, and there's no official on-the-record response. But either way, it shouldn't be anything difficult. It's certainly not controversial to me, but I will say this, another reason that I think it would be great for someone, I can't really think of any negative, quite frankly, other than just some politics. When I say politics, all I mean is some particular reason that someone would feel uncomfortable to do it. I don't, mean anything sinister, but just they don't feel comfortable doing it. But the same people, will have authority to do certain things that they will have to vote upon. If this commission were to decide to write certain things in a charter, that same group of people would be making decisions at certain points, and those would be public decisions. So because I'm all for transparency and openness, I don't believe in, behind the scenes things. We made a decision. I believe we should officially invite them. And those who don't want to come should officially decline that invitation for whatever reason they want to.
Your point's well taken. I didn't believe what I was doing was the end of the conversation. I was just trying to get a sense before it formally went out, because I thought that was a courteous way of managing it rather than just issuing the invitation. So I don't want anyone to construe that the way I managed the initial conversation was the end of the process. I'm giving you what amounts to an interim kind of report, and I understand what we voted on, just trying to give you their sense, so and be respectful. But I think after this conversation this week, an invitation will go out, but I wanted to give you an interim update about how I initiated that, let you know that it's in motion and what the initial reaction is. Commissioner Sandell?
I would like to strongly agree with Commissioner Ranger. I don't construe any negative, but I think we ought to send out an invitation. We are a group, we're a public body, send out the invitation, see what happens, and we all see what goes on. And like you said, I don't care what their reasons might be for not coming or coming, but we will have officially extended I don't have to worry that Miguel Solis forgot to tell somebody, or somebody's feelings were hurt, or they didn't get along and they didn't know. If we send an official invitation, then they can speak to us as a group.
Let me be assured, the message went out to each board member. He did not try to block that, so I don't want that to leave that impression.
Between the trustees.
I understand. Yeah. The process is not over. Like I said, I saw this as kind of a two-step so you could understand what was going on. So, Commissioner Garza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think your informal communication is exactly as Commissioner Flores and myself had stated would occur. On this commission, there are two of us who have served as trustees and would sort of understand how is it the type of request coming forward would be viewed. We can continue to push it, and in my mind that's going to be somewhat confrontational. Having served on both sides, been a trustee and now served on this commission, I think the point has been well made that at the end of the day the trustees will have to take a public view, and I think many of them are waiting to see what the results of this commission is and how we substantiate whatever we say, and then they'll make a decision. So I think it's very unfair of us to ask them to make a decision when at the end of the day we're the ones that are going to make a recommendation one way or another. They're the ones that are going to view everything, and then they will publicly take a stand. So what we're kind of asking them to do is, before this vote comes up, tell us how you really think, and maybe we'll write it that way, maybe we won't write it that way, but either way, it really leads to confrontation, and it leads to non-communication and possible mistrust. They don't know our intentions. They can interpret them 1,000 different ways. So rather than even having that come up, why don't we continue to deal with the general public like we have been, organizations who have asked us? Why don't we keep our resources focused on those who have asked us for our time, rather than, wait a second, let's go back to the people who appointed us. I'm sure each of them have spoken to their appointees, and one of the reasons they put us here was for whatever purpose. You know that reason. So in moving forward, it brings no benefit but conflict. If we want conflict, move forward. That's exactly what's going to occur, conflict.
I'm going to, as chair, just respond to that, to both statements. A motion was passed, and we approved inviting them at the last meeting. My sense to find some common middle ground, which is how I've been trying to operate as chair, was to get a sense of it. I think we, as a group, voted to invite them. And I will do that formally with the help of Mr. Harris this week. And I have a great deal of respect for Commissioner Garza, but I just have to say, and I don't try to use the bully pulpit as the chair, but I'm going to say it, Commissioner. The thing that weighs heavily on me is this sense that implicit in our process is just conflict. I cannot tell you, as a chair, the people who have had anxiety that we are going to be in conflict by engaging in a conversation. I will just say it pains me, and I take that as a reflection on our work, that any of you would feel that we are not capable of having a conversation with any elected official, any volunteer, any person who cares about the DISD without the respect and privilege that we have in talking with them. And if there is somehow a mood that I have allowed to take root in this commission as chair, I do apologize and ask for your forgiveness. Because if we are known as anything so far, it is, I think, modeling a way to have a conversation on a difficult issue with occasionally my oddball humor, and occasionally, we're getting impatient with each other. But we have stayed the course with enormous expectations and enormous pressure on us to somehow, have a conversation on a complex subject that's never been done before. And I do not want anyone who is hearing me now or watching me to think that somehow we, as a commission, have any intention of harming, confronting, demeaning, belittling anyone that we ask to be in conversation with us. I think we all know we have no subpoena power. We have no authority. Hell, we have one staff person. And he's my coach. And he has another job, I'm told. Let me just finish. I mean, I'm not trying to be critical. If the invitee assumes that somehow we're being provocative, I can't own that on our behalf. I mean, I'm just not going to. And I will just say where we are, for everyone who thought SOPS would run the other way, for the record, let me just say they could have not been more gracious and want to come and talk to us. The reason they didn't get scheduled is because the head of it has a trial in Houston. I had no problem. In fact, one that Mr. Valdez is his hero now is Dr. Earhart. I mean, talk about strange conversation. And so I have not encountered that, and I understand what you're saying, and I'm trying to be argumentative, and I'm not trying to, pick on you, Commissioner Garza, all right?
You're not picking on me.
Okay, I just don't want to personalize. This is a general statement, all right, that we have to have confidence in ourselves to invite those people and in our groups who we think can help us. We will make our own conclusions. We will reach our own findings. We will decide how we will be at the end of the day. And if my kind of subtle approach is cause any consternation, we will have our answer by the end of the week, and I will report out to you. I just want to do that. Two, we're working on getting a meeting with Superintendent Miles. Mr. Harris is working with his scheduler, and as soon as we have that arranged, we will share that with you as well. And, that's just kind of outstanding items that we're trying to advance because that's what we approved last week. So this is just a report back that those activities are in motion. All right? Are we good with that? And as soon as I know, I will let you know, and the formal invitation will go out, your point is well taken, to the board, and we will get them formally to respond as they've done informally. I will absolutely take care of that. So where I want to go, because we had a group, and I've talked to the Texas Organizing Project and everyone on our initial list. So here's a proposal I want to suggest to you. We have a lot of educator groups. We have NEA, AFT, Dallas School Administrators Association, which didn't really get on the list, but they have asked to participate. We have Hector Flores, give me the Hispanic.
LULAC?
No, not LULAC, it's the
Well, the
Hispanic
Hispanic Association
of School Administrators.
School Administrators.
We had on our list the, where's my notes here? Hang on here. The Dallas School Administrators Association, and then CASE would participate in that, National Association of Black School Educators. So what we have is kind of a grouping of the people on the front lines or who have recently been on the front lines. So what I would like to, if you look at agenda item, 6B and 6A, what I'm looking, 5B and 6A, what I'm trying to get us to see if we can organize a meeting to have a collaborative conversation with the faculty and leadership of our schools and administrators in some setting large enough where we would have everyone all together. I don't have a format, just have a conversation with the people who are actually out there doing the teaching and running our schools.
So on 5 or 6.
Well, I was just kind of conflating 5B, all right, because we didn't have the Dallas school.
I mean, if you want 6, I was going to make a motion. If you want 5,
Yeah, no, I mean 6. So I'm just trying to have one thing. Yeah, please, you're recognized.
We have a discussion after the motion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to expedite it, I think it's an excellent idea. I think anything that invites teachers and administrators and whoever wishes to come together, just like tonight. I personally benefited greatly from this discussion tonight.
Right.
I thought it was excellent. So I would like to move that we proceed with your idea, your suggestion to invite educators broadly.
Yes.
Not that they have to be approved by someone. Anyone who wishes to participate, NEA, AFT, organizations, whatever, and that we do that as soon as possible and you schedule it, according to their convenience. That's my motion to do that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second by Mr. Bass. Any discussion?
I'm trying to understand, so are we kind of opening it to say anybody who wants to come talk to us, we'll schedule you?
No, what the groups that had already asked, with the exception of the Dallas School, I gotta get my glasses back on here. The DS, hang on a minute, the Dallas School Administrators Association was not on our original list, but subsequently they have heard about this and said, could we participate? I visited with Linda Isaacs, their director, or head staff person. And it occurred to me in talking to her, and I've talked to the various NEA, AFT, people and the other school administrators, Hector Flores said, what if we found a way to do this together collaboratively, to have a conversation through your organization to deal with Commissioner Sandel's anxiety and what I've heard repeatedly about retaliation. Commissioner Eisen-Newsom mentioned if we got people to speak through their associations, even if they're not, they can still come. I'm not going to assume every teacher and every administrator is in one of those groups, but if we had a forum, a conversation, we'll have to work on time, but get obviously a place bigger than this, and just say we want a half a day, whatever it takes, just to have a conversation with the people we're supposed to be thinking about it, and rather than doing them one-ofs, just let's listen to them and be engaged in that conversation. That was my general idea. And the people I've floated this out to kind of liked it. So, I got to just say, look, I wanted to try it out on you before it went anywhere, just to see how do we have an organized way of talking to the teachers all together in a way that is safe, in a way that's comfortable, in a way that really hears them, and lets us ask these questions. And I was telling Commissioner Vesey, one of the things that just spurred me to this was listening to his stories about his wife crying at his elementary school. And then he just told me a horror story before the meeting started about other teachers there. And I just said, we got to find a way to engage the core front line in the conversation sooner, and I appreciate that, Commissioner Ranger, sooner than later. And that's all I'm asking for, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, many years ago, I participated with Representative Earhart in a forum much like you're describing. I believe she was responsible for securing that location. As I recall, it was at St. Thomas Aquinas Church in a big hall, but there were many other, certainly there are many forums like that. But I think that a place where we are not so much a commission, but but participants in a larger group. That was a housing task force and I remember it as one of the most productive days, evenings of my work that in that area, and I'm very hopeful that we can get a great turnout of the different organizations, and I think there will be people who will want to come and hear.
I would hope.
I'm willing, and I'll do whatever I can to hold the costs down on that. I have a couple of ideas about things where we would not have to, the district wouldn't have to have a cost for us to be able to do that.
I think it would be important that we stream it or whatever we've been doing in this room, because I think the public needs to hear this conversation. Yes, you have a venue idea?
I have a venue idea. Dallas County Schools has that new building over on Samuel.
Oh, yeah.
We've had several meetings already.
I'll take you up on that.
I think that they have technology.
Okay, so stay a minute when we're done, and I appreciate that. Is there any further discussion on that? Yes. Who is up next?
I think he was next. Go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Yeah.
I wanted to just mention, though, we've heard a lot about the district sometimes not having access to information, with parents. But the district has started 2 new sites on its DISD site, the Hub. And I just want to put this out for people to know that it's available, where you can find out about district news. It's called the Hub. And the other thing is they need to know how to get to DISD itself, which would be DISD, just, Google it or whatever. And the other one is this public school choice survey. They put this out about a week ago. It's asking for input from parents on their children. We are committed to providing more educational options for our students based on their specific interests, learning styles, and needs. In order to do this, we first need to hear your opinions. So I encourage parents to look at this and to do the survey, because a lot of people have asked about it. A lot of people want to know, how do you get information from the district and how do you approach the district? These are two good ways to do it. So I just want to bring that up.
Okay, I caught it. Commissioner Blackburn.
I didn't request a comment, but
I withdraw your recognition in light of the later.
I have the spotlight. I only wonder if, rather than, I have no problem with us discussing it and approving it, but I wonder if that should be a meeting that's facilitated by the Education Programs Working Group.
Yeah, let me work those details out. What I wanted, because I think the due process we're trying to follow, that I know I kind of get speed up occasionally, but I think if you'll just let me work out those mechanics, and we'll have the right leadership running it.
I think.
Yeah, Commissioner Ranger.
Okay, as I understand it, these are people who are engaged in education and therefore have personal experiences and knowledge of the educational profession and the reality of it. I am a little bit concerned about, once again, assigning that somewhere. As a commission, it's just like the group here. I mean, that could have been assigned to some subgroup. But I think we benefited from being here and just hearing their presentation to us initially, which is all we're really doing, is providing an opportunity for people who have a point of view or an opinion or experience to engage in this presentation to us, so that it will give us a database.
Let me just respond to both of you, because my intention, this would be commission-wide, because these, except for the school administrator, Dallas School. Yeah, thank you. It's just fatigue setting in. Was the new group, and these groups would have been coming to the commission. So I'm trying to have an all-commission meeting, and if I wasn't clear about that, for this conversation in a location large enough, neutral enough, that we could have this kind of collaborative conversation with those groups, rather than 3 at a time. We could really engage principals and teachers rather than seeing them oppositionally, management, labor. This is we need to hear how everybody's in this together. It's our local, it's our front line, and so that was the intent. And I will share with you how this is evolving with some dates and things and process, and as soon as I can formulate it with the help from Dino and others, then we will get that out to you as soon as possible. I mean, we got a lot of different groups. I got to clear their calendars and just kind of get the DISD and teacher calendars. So, but I'm anxious to get this done and out in the public early, because I think they're an important voice collectively that we need to hear. Commissioner
How are
Cindy.
we going to let the rank and file of Dallas teachers know about this?
Just let me work the detail out, and I'll email that. I didn't come with a fully vetted concept.
That everyone
Everybody's going to
has the information.
everybody's going to know. There are mysteries about the DISD that have yet been revealed to me, and I just need to keep working at it. So if there's no further discussion, I'll take a voice vote. All those in favor. The motion is to aggregate the two teachers groups and the administrative groups. They'll be mentioned in the mission, to have a conversation, a collaborative conversation with the commission to hear what they think is going on and what we can learn for whatever work, how it impacts us. And if the result is it goes into something smaller to delve into something more deeply, then we can take it from there. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And we still have groups that Texas Organizing Project, SOPS. I am working on scheduling that. Our next meeting is the 20th. So I will email you how that is working out and how people are clearing their calendars. And as soon as I know that, I'll give you a heads up. And I think we've heard from Danae.
Commissioner Gutierrez has given us...
Commissioner Gutierrez, I apologize.
That's all right. No. Her suggestion was that Figueroa has a very strong PTA and could bring in the community. Unfortunately, they meet on the 20th. Which is our next meeting. So I was going to propose to commissioners that we kind of flip. We meet here on the 21st, that Tuesday evening at 6, and on the 20th at 6, we go out to
Madrona still?
No, Figueroa, okay. School, and have our last public meeting. I mean, we're still far enough ahead, we can do that. We capitalize on what the commissioner said. It's a very strong PTA, and she feels comfortable that could be a good foundation in which bring in the rest of the community. But that means on our part we change to Tuesday at 6 on the 21st.
Okay. I'm a little bit disappointed in the notion of. We were supposed to go to Francisco Pancho Medrano's middle school, and I'm not understanding what would be the reason for not having it at that school when that was the original schedule.
The original schedule was that. However, when we threw out the idea of going to a school where it's a PTA night and what have you, she says, I have the perfect school. We can bring everybody there. It gives me a good foundation and a strong PTA that will help build, get out the word. That's the commissioner.
I do understand, and I would like to express the strong opposition to that. And my reason is, I think we should follow through with the initial pass-through consistently. We have had our hearings consistently up until this point. We didn't do the other hearings in this way, and I frankly would like to go to the place that was originally assigned in the same manner as we did every other commission hearing, so that we will finish this process. We have exactly one commission hearing to finish this, and now we're about to change the rules of the game and add on different things, and now we're going to change the place. I would like to go, unless there's some strong reason that I'm not hearing right now, to the school that was originally assigned, and that we have it pretty consistently with what we've done before. Because if we're going to change it now, then we could have had all the hearings that way and set them up in a totally different,
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, wait a minute. Well, let me just hear from everyone and then pull the conversation together.
Mr. Chairman, as I recall, each of the commissioners has been able to pick their own school. And I believe that Commissioner Gutierrez should be afforded the same courtesy that the rest of us have been afforded. And I think that that if she has an excellent school and that she wants us to see in her district, that's the one we should go to.
Well,
Wait, let me just get everyone here.
I believe that the reason why we're doing these hearings is so we can get the input from all the parents, the community. And if we can get more parents involved because of a stronger PTA, I strongly agree to it.
Well, why are we assuming that we cannot do that?
Commissioner Ranger, let Commissioner Sandell.
My only question is, how are we going to make sure that this district is adequately represented if we're just meeting at one elementary school? Is there going to be information? We've had people come from all over for every single solitary meeting. Saturday seems to make it easier for them. I don't know if I have a preference either way, but are we just going to be seeing this school's PTA as opposed to the entire district coming? Okay.
So let me just say there's two issues. One is the location, one is the venue, and that's different. And it would reverse or add another night meeting rather than Saturday. I mean, I'm hearing 3 points here. One is location, one is venue, and one is time. We've had I think the point made about the district representative has had their opportunity to pick their location, and we've been respectful about that. Can the school accommodate? I'm assuming that's in the same district, and that it would, we'd have to repost it anyhow. And so, that would be an issue. There's an issue of the date, the evening, and, and that impacts us as opposed to a Saturday. So I'll go with, did you want to say anything before we go second round?
I really don't have a strong opinion either way.
Okay.
I want to just get it done.
All right. Just want to, who didn't get it? Let me get Ron. I'll get back to you, Commissioner.
Well, as long as Ms. Gutierrez, she should know because she should have access to her district rep. So, I think as long as that's fulfilled, I can't see the location changing or the day changing, making too big a difference. And I actually think that we may hear more parents like this, which is really what we want to hear.
Okay, let me, Ms. Reed.
I'm very open, but I do think a PTA forum, you're more likely to get more parents in that retrospect also. But then
Commissioner,
district, you would know.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're fine.
I apologize.
Just for the record, recording and so forth, I want to acknowledge that October 20th is my sister's birthday, and I was going to miss it anyway, so now she knows why.
October 21st is my birthday, so we're going to be working either day. So there you go.
We will be sure to sing happy birthday on both evenings. Commissioner Ranger, second round.
Yes, the suggestion about the PTA, I do not oppose that. However, we didn't adopt that, nor did we assign anyone. We simply were discussing that, and I don't really know how that was even presented to Commissioner Gutierrez. But certainly, I don't object to trying to increase the turnout, but I do object to the rules being changed in a way that is sort of unnecessary at the last minute for one hearing when the others have been carried out differently. In addition to that, the commission does not act by discussion, and when we actually want to change something, as an example, we approved a schedule of every public hearing. We adopted that, and we adopted it for all commission hearings. And now we're going to just like that, change one last commission hearing without even going through the process of officially deciding that we wish to all of a sudden have a different criteria for that hearing. And it can be done, but it just seems to me that the consistency of all the hearings being carried out in the same pattern and in the same way, it doesn't do any injustice to anything. I certainly suggested from the beginning that Commissioner Gutierrez should have the major say-so in the decision about where she might want to suggest, but she was also providing information about a PTA and all of this type of thing, but we never adopted that. We didn't say, okay, we want to change the rules now, we're going to abandon the decision we made before And we had a whole schedule, and it was set up, and we didn't do that first. And that was a part of that process. If you're going to change it, then we're literally changing the approval that we had given before, and that would be to predetermine, this particular outcome so that we could go to a PTA environment. But at this point, what I would suggest is that we go on and pass this, because that's what I think the majority wants to do at this point, and not delay it any further. So,
And I appreciate that. I think what was unusual for me is that when we didn't make the quorum for a posted meeting, that was a first for me. I mean, what happens to a meeting where a quorum is not made, and it's basically voided, and you're now set, which is why the agenda, trying to follow your good advice, we have to make a formal decision to reschedule it, which is why it was worded that way. So I'm agreeing with all your point, but in that ability to reschedule it, it gives us some flexibility to accommodate her, even if it is not how it was done previously. And that is where we're trying to find some common ground. So I appreciate that. Commissioner Blackburn?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we schedule the District 8 community meeting for Sigaroa Elementary School.
Yes.
On Monday, October 20th at whatever time is convenient for them.
Second.
Okay.
And as a part of that, are you going to move our meeting to the 21st? Can you include that?
I was going to make it separate, but that's fine. I add that our next commission as a whole meeting.
And that's important, because I have to talk to the people we were scheduling for the 20th, and I'll get back to them.
Second, Commissioner Blackburn's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. I don't want to say unanimously, Commissioner Ranger?
Abstain.
And one abstention, Commissioner Ranger. The hour's late. Chair, you've heard all the chair's comments. If there's no other business, we'll adjourn our meeting at 9:25. Thank you, everybody.
Stop. Turn off the mic.